back with another Splinterlands video. So in the last video, I showed the half reveal for the Possibilis legendary airdrop, the new water summoner. And today it was actually revealed. It was just revealed about an hour ago, a little less than that. So I just wanted to walk through the stats, reveal the stats to you, and then we'll do what we normally do. We'll head over to Peak Monsters. We'll walk through the modern water and neutral cards, see which cards get a buff. I already did a little shopping based on the stats reveal, so then I'll also show you a little bit about what I personally did. But before we get into all that, just a reminder, I am Hawks21 and I cover Splinterlands here on the channel. If you like sort of breaking news Splinterlands content like this, where you're going to get my initial opinion, and then maybe some strategies about how you can take advantage and set yourself up for the release, then you've come to the right place. And if you are new to this YouTube community, it would be awesome if you could take a second to subscribe to the channel. Okay, so here we go. We got this artwork previously, and here are the stats. So very, very, very unique card, I would say. +2 hearts, that's good, right? It's just a nice add-on. But the two abilities are two abilities we've never seen in a summoner before. And it's going to be very, very interesting to see how they play out and how they work in practice. So we have Trample and Reach. So right off the bat, you can sort of see that this is a melee summoner. Trample and Reach both can't affect archers and magic monsters because archers and magic monsters can't trample. And also, they can attack from the second position already, so Reach isn't that big of a deal to them. So this is sort of a big, big melee buff summoner. Now, I think it's a very, very unique card and a unique set of abilities, so trying to gauge its overall effectiveness, I think, is going to be a little difficult. I think there's going to be some specific strategies that I can call out right now that are going to be interesting. But anyone, I would say, trying to gauge its overall power as it currently stands, I think it's a far-fetched idea that, you're truly going to know how good this card is going to be, just given that it's pretty unique. And the other thing is, I feel like this in particular is a card that is going to boost up specific cards. And I'll show you that later on. So as we get more and more releases, whether that be the water airdrop card for Rift Watchers, or, I think we're due for some new reward cards that are going to come out soon. Depending on what cards are in those, that'll be a huge factor into, how good this summoner ends up being. Okay, let's get into the cards. I don't think there's anything else I want to say about this. It's just a very unique set of abilities that, I wasn't expecting. I'm glad I didn't have time to make a prediction video because this definitely would not have been it. So I am here on Peak Monsters, and I've already set it up so that we are on neutral and water in modern. So let's just quickly go through. One thing to note with Trample is that sneak monsters, if they eliminate the backline monster, it doesn't trigger a trample unless there is a camouflaged monster at the end. So think this through with me. If Dr. Blight, which has camouflage, is in the last position for your opponent, you're going to be attacking with your sneak monsters the 5th monster your opponent puts out there, or the second to last monster. If a sneak monster eliminates the second to last monster, it will trigger a trample onto the 6th camouflage monster. If you run a strategy that has multiple camouflage monsters, so let's say you run you go up against Earth, and you have Dr. Blight in the 5th position and Jin Boka in the 6th position. So, your Pelacor Bandit would be attacking the 4th position in that case. If it were to eliminate the 4th position monster, it would then continue on to the 5th. And if it was the Stampede rule set, if it were to then eliminate the Dr. Blight in the 5th position, it would then continue on to the 6th. So in practice, the idea of attacking the backline monster won't trigger a trample, but if there's a camo behind it, it will. So it won't work every time, but there are instances where sneak monsters will trigger tramples. And when you think about it, right, Dr. Blight's one of the more difficult cards to get rid of in the game. It's a very, very powerful card. It's, awesome. This then becomes a pretty interesting strategy for trying to combat Dr. Blight spam. If you bring the new Water Summoner plus a bunch of sneak monsters, you could potentially trigger a trample, which could do damage to Dr. Blight before he rolls up to the front and does all the damage that he normally does. So let's keep going. So I'm going to talk about something at the end about just a general strategy, but it's going to come back to the Gargoyle Lion in a second. I think the Wavesmith gets a little bit of a boost, not directly from the summoner, but just that shield or armor has become such a powerful part of the water sort of strategy at the moment, with Kelia bringing the shield, that you do lose the shield here. So if you're going to bring a lot of melee monsters, having a shield is a good thing, and the Wavesmith is right now the cheapest protect. And I think it gets up to 3 magic damage, so it can actually do some damage. I think the Wavesmith becomes a much more useful card. I'm going to come back to the Cruel Cephalopod. The Flying Squid, so it doesn't benefit from the reach, but you are going to get the trample benefit, right? So now, you're just going to add trample to this card, so that gets a little interesting. Disintegrator, now you could basically put this in the 2nd position and have it attack. It already has trample at silver, so it doesn't get that boost, but any melee monster now we're talking about that doesn't have reach could attack from the 2nd position. We already talked about sneak monsters with Uraeus. You could run another interesting sneak strategy if you're expecting a Dr. Blight. The Lemel Refugee is a very interesting one. So this card hasn't gotten a lot of love as a standalone because basically it's competing as a main tank with a card like, the Demon Shark. This is only 1 more mana, so it has a lot of the same sort of setup. It's a little less powerful, a little more defensive, and I just feel like a lot of people end up going with the Demon Shark. But now, if you give this thing reach, or you put this in the 1st position, and then you put a card like the Demon Shark or another tank in the 2nd position, this card then becomes more viable, right? It could be a very powerful card. It's pretty fast, has the Enrage, has good attack, void armor. You can now almost bring 2 tanks because you're going to have the automatic reach ability. That was what I was going to talk about at the end, but let me talk about it now. So Gargoyle Lion, for example. Not a very powerful card. Probably one of the least used cards that I see in Modern right now. However, I would say the main reason for that is because it's 6 mana and it's a main tank, and what it brings as a main tank is just not that useful. It's useful, it's not, there's better options is what I would say. But now you can bring 2 tanks. So imagine you then bring this in the 1st position, has Enrage, has Flying, and now you're going to give it Trample. So it's going to get up to 5 speed with the Flying, going to be a little difficult to hit, have some magic defense. And then you put another main tank like the Demon Shark behind it. The Demon Shark's going to be able to attack from the 2nd position now. The Gargoyle Lion is going to soak up some damage in the front spot and also be able to attack. So now all of a sudden some of these meh tanks with the reach ability, you could then either put them in the 2nd position or put them in the 1st position and let your better tanks utilize the reach ability without having to worry about taking damage. I'd say the same is true for the Cruel Cephalopod, which I wanted to talk about. If you put this thing in the 1st position and then what you would normally put as your main tank in the 2nd position, specifically when you're talking about no magic, it's going to bring at the highest levels 13 armor plus health. Now all of a sudden, your main tank in the second position is going to have a huge amount of protection in front of it, and both cards are going to be able to attack. So one thing is like a broad category I think this summoner boosts is secondary tanks, maybe more defensive tanks. Cards that don't get a lot of love as main tanks because they're maybe a little bit more skewed to the defensive side, I think now get a use when you can play two tanks at the same time. All right, let's get back to where we were. Tidebiter picks up a little bit of a benefit, mainly with the trample. So, it's getting 3 attack, which is decent, specifically for 3 mana. Now all of a sudden you give it trample, and it could do a lot of damage. Let's see what else sticks out to me. Frost Lion gets a little interesting. Again, it's another really defensive tank for low mana that now you can put it in the front, has void armor and shield, and for only 2 mana, it's a little bit to go through, right? It's not a very easy card to get rid of, specifically when you consider the 2 mana. You put this in the first position and you can protect whatever your main tank would be in the second position and let it get a couple attacks off. Okay, here's one of the big ones I think benefits. Deep Lurker. So now, opportunity monsters are fantastic with the trample ability. Fantastic. It's normally, or unless there's a taunt out there, it's going to attack the monster with the lowest amount of health. That increases the chances that you are going to eliminate that monster. Right? Thus, triggering a trample. You combine that with the fact that the Deep Lurker has poison as well as demoralize. So if you're going up against another melee play, you could create a situation where the Deep Lurker eliminates 1 card, right? It has 5 attack, so it does a ton of damage, eliminates the card it was attacking, triggers a trample, then poisons the second card. So then you're going to start the process of damaging that second card already just via the poison from that second attack. So you could create some really great strings here with the Deep Lurker, specifically combining the opportunity and the poison. I think this is the big winner of this summoner, and it's already a fantastic card. I think it gets a big boost here. Demented Shark. So again, I personally, as I talked about, I'm focusing now just on Chaos Legion and Rift Watchers. So this is like an older reward card, but obviously this reward card gets a huge boost. You can put it in the second position with the Inspire. So the big thing that this card brings is the Inspire from level 1. And what makes this card difficult to play sometimes is it's not a very good main tank. So a lot of times when I would play this card, I would use it as a sneak defender since it had the thorns, or I would just stick it randomly in the middle, just knowing that I was using it for the Inspire. But now, I feel like this finds a very clear home in the second position, and just treating it and using it as specifically a reach monster. So I think this is a great card to add. Again, anything with opportunity, Feasting Seaweed. This card fell in price a ton. And I think this is an awesome card. 4, and at the top you're getting 4 attack. You add trample to this thing with the scavenger. It's going to be eliminating cards, trampling, adding health. Awesome card to add in. Demon Shark is kind of a weird one because it already has the trample ability. So you're losing out on that. But the main thing I think this gets, I don't think this is a huge buff, but you can now play this in the second position, which takes away some of its sort of benefit being the enrage. However, you could then buy yourself some time, let this get some attacks off. I'm thinking also maybe a poison rule set where it's going to take a little bit of poison damage from the second position, but no other damage. So now all of a sudden it does get enraged, and it's going to be hard for your opponent to get to in that second position. So that's something to think about, but there's a little redundancy here. I almost missed the Parasitic Growth. Just any opportunity monster. The Deep Lurker is the most affordable, so that's the one I would be targeting, and I did target, little spoiler alert. But anything with opportunity, I'd be going after. Zenith Monk gets a little bit of a boost, kind of the same thing. You can put it in the front position and hide your bigger tank behind it, or you can just utilize its reach capabilities with the new summoner. Here's Scavo Technomancer. This is the card I want to talk about. The Rust ability, I think, is going to be huge. So consider the Deep Lurker, what I was talking about, right? Or any opportunity monster triggering those tramples. You then bring in the Rust ability, because you're going to want to eliminate any shield you have on the other side. You want your Deep Lurker not having to go through shield and just hitting the health right away, seeing if you can trigger some tramples and sort of get that rolling. Rust is going to be the best way to do that. On top of that, if you consider the, where is it? The Flying Squid, seeing as this is a reach card, this card might get used a little less now because, again, you can put any melee card as a reach card with water. So, this card loses a little bit of its value. One thing you're losing here is the blind that it gets in gold. You come down back here, this card gets blind at the highest level. So again, if you're in gold, you don't get to make that play, but this can not only bring a Rust, it can also replace the blind brought in by the Flying Squid. Almost miss another opportunity monster, the Battering Ram. It's only 2 mana, only has 2 attack, but still, same thing. Any opportunity monsters, if you could boost this with the Demented Shark or a card I'm going to talk about in a little bit, this could start doing a lot of damage, and all you have to do is trigger 1 trample, and you can change the entire game. Let's see, Serpentveld, just another, put this in the second position now instead of the first. It's a little weak to magic, so maybe you could buy it some time in the second position. Onyx Sentinel is sort of, you could put this up front as a defender, right? And then have your main tank behind it. So I feel like a card like this doesn't get used that much, specifically with water, because people want to play the Demon Shark. Now you could potentially have an opportunity to put this card up front and put the Demon Shark in the second position. Tortillo the Frozen, again, not a great tank, but maybe as a reach monster becomes a little bit more interesting. Specifically in reverse speed, which is nice. That's another thing I didn't mention. Right now with water, right, Kelia gives you the speed boost. So it's hard to play water in reverse speed. But now, the new card here gives you the opportunity maybe to play some reverse speed lineups. Let's keep going through here. So Venator is a little interesting because a lot of times, think about it, if you're playing, maybe not as applicable for water because you have the 3 mana reach card. Why am I not remembering any of the names right now? There he is. You have the Tidebiter. However, this card does get a little bit of a boost. If you can, like a lot of times I'm playing this in the second position when I don't bring the Tidebiter for whatever reason. And normally it just sits there. It's a support card, right? So I don't really care about the melee attack. But I mean, if you're going to give me a free attack from the second position, and who knows, maybe it does trigger a trample or something, then this card, gets a little boost, even if it is very, very tiny. I would just say its usefulness ticks up a little bit. Let's see. The Tower Griffins protect. I talked about the Wavesmith before. I would probably just go with the Wavesmith, but this is a great card. Kelia, I don't feel like this directly comes at Kelia at all. I'd have to think this through a little bit further, but yeah, I wouldn't be too worried if I was Kelia. If you had bought up a bunch of Kelias or something, that this wipes away some of its value. I think they're going to have their own lanes. Let's see, the River Hallandale. So this is the other Inspire monster. This is a melee summoner. So I want to max out cards that boost melee, and the River Hellendale is one of those. So the Resurrect also is interesting because if you're resurrecting an enraged monster or something, or if you're resurrecting your big tank, and then just giving it another opportunity to potentially trigger a trample, boosts Resurrect. And then on top of that, the Inspire. So I think this card gets a boost as a more meaningful support card. Legionnaire Alver. So this is kind of what I was talking about as putting a defensive tank first, now that you can basically play 2 tanks. This is one of the biggest sort of examples of that. You might not play the Legionnaire Alver as your only tank all the time because it's very defensive. It does have some great offensive abilities, mainly Giant Killer, but this is a defensive card. So, but now you play this in the first position, has to get through because it has Void Armor, all that armor and health. 7 or 16 at the highest level. Make that actually 19 now when you add in the 2 health from the new summoner, or 18. Sorry, bad math. And this card's a beast to try to get through. So then you could play another tank in the second position, and your opponent has to get through this card first. So this card definitely gets a boost. It's probably the easiest example of you can now play 2 tanks. So defensive tanks that are great, that normally don't get picked over offensive tanks, now come into play. The Rust here on Coral Wraith, big boost. Again, I already talked about Rust. You want to eliminate that armor to free up some opportunity monsters. Bakjira is an interesting one. Another crazy example of putting a defensive tank first, right? Bakjira is a tank, flat out. If you play him in the second position, it brings the slow and stuff, or it may be a snipe defender. But for the most part, Bakjira gets most of its value from being a tank. The problem is, obviously, it doesn't have any attack, as you know. So, a lot of times you're going to go with the Demon Shark for 2 extra mana over a Bakjira. But now you might not have to choose. You toss Bakjira in the first position, toss Demon Shark in the second position. Demon Shark gets to benefit from the reach. Your opponent has to go through Bakjira first. And that makes Bakjira a much more interesting card. You add on top of that the +2 health here to Bakjira, putting it from 16 to 18. Instead of 5 healing now, it's going to heal for 6. So it's going to trigger an additional heal. So it becomes that much better. I think this is going to be a low-key card that benefits and starts to get more use. What else do we have here? Coral Lurker, you're going to give it the trample now, which is interesting. The reach is something to think about because, it's going to, if you try to put this in the second position, your opponent's going to attack the second position, which could be useful, again, if you wanted to put the Demon Shark in the first position and then this in the second. But you also then have to be worried about potential blast damage. The other thought would be if you have more triage monsters than you do tank healers, you could maybe put this in the reach position and just triage it instead of being able to heal it. So that's a play. Chain Golem, just kind of similar what we're talking about. This is going to get a benefit from the trample and the reach as well. This is it's a mix of offensive and defensive. So, maybe you're more likely to put this in the first position, or maybe you want to protect it in the second position. And I think that's about it for going through the cards. I'm sure I missed some synergies. Again, I like to do these sort of initial take and reactions. And then as I come up with more ideas, I'll update it or let you guys know on Twitter or stuff. But yeah, those were my initial takes as I was going through the cards. Now let's quickly, before the video gets too long, talk about what I actually bought. So I'm back here on Splinterlands. I have my owned Chaos Legion Rift Watchers reward cards for water and neutral. I'm just going to show you some of the stuff I did. So Cruel Cephalopod, I had it at a level 8. I decided to go ahead and, I think it was buy another 130 copies to get this to the max level. Again, kind of what I talked about, being able to play 2 tanks. This card becomes more interesting if I can stick this up front in a better damage dealing tank in the second position. So I was kind of dragging my feet, maxing that card out. I was going to do it at some point. This was the good trigger. Big buy I made was I had a max level Deep Lurker, and that was about it. So I picked up some of the cheaper copies as soon as this card came out for about 16, 17 cents. This is a card I want to have a lot of anyways. And so, I was pretty early seeing this card come out, or seeing the summoner get released. So I wanted to, hop on and grab as many Deep Lurkers as I responsibly could. So that was sort of the biggest buy that I made, was the Deep Lurker. I did max out my Lemo Refugee. I had about 100 copies, so I needed to buy 300. But kind of just what I'm talking about, this card becomes more interesting now with the ability to play it alongside another tank. You don't have to pick just one tank, you can pick multiple tanks. Is that it for water? Oh, and I did max out the River Hellendale. That was the other thing I did in water. I only had it at level 2. I was just using it for the Inspire previously, which again, the main use here is going to be the Inspire. But now that I think I'm going to play it a lot more, I want that additional magic. I want the Dispel, just to make the card a little bit better, because I think it's going to become more of a staple in my water teams with the new summoner. I made some neutral plays as well. Just got to find them. It might have only been one. Nope, so I picked up the Scavo Technomancer. I had about 50 of them, so I needed to finish it off. Kind of what I talked about. I think it's going to be a really great card with this summoner. I really want the Rust. The Blind is going to replace the Blind with the Flying Squid, which I'm unlikely to play as much anymore. And then obviously the Blast helps. So I think this card just got a lot better, specifically, with that summoner. And the other thing I did was I maxed out the Legionnaire Alvair. So I only had 3 to go. And just what I talked about, sort of the defensive tank strategy. I was dragging my feet a little bit, maxing this one out as well. It just wasn't a card that I played that much. I see the value. It's a very good card. I just always tend to go for the offensive tank or the fast tank. But, I figured it was time to max that out. Now that I don't have to choose one or the other, I can play both. So yeah, that's going to be it. These are my very early initial thoughts. Sorry, I've been talking a lot. I will update these as more ideas sort of come to me with this summoner. I'm pretty excited for it. It's unique, and I want unique. I don't want cookie cutter type cards. I want cards that are going to create new synergies, new strategies, new ways of playing the game. And I think this certainly creates a new way of playing the game. I think time will tell how good it ends up being. It's pretty unique, so I'm not going to say that I think it's super, super powerful or not. I'm going to want to use it first, but once I do use it, you guys will be the first to hear it. I'll be making a video as soon as I get it, and I think it should be pretty soon. So we're at, so we have under 250K to go to unlock it, and I know of one, because I'm involved in it, massive bulk buy that's going to be going through most likely tomorrow that I think is going to just push it over the edge by itself, to be completely honest. But we'll see. So I think that we're going to be getting this card sooner rather than later. That'll wrap it up. Sorry it was a little rambly, but those were my, off the top of the head thoughts. Once it came out, I went in, bought some of the cards I immediately thought were good, grabbed my microphone, and hit record. So yeah, I'm going to stop it there. Let me know what you guys think of the new summoner. Did I miss any cards that are going to benefit greatly? Am I overstating the benefit for some? What am I missing? What am I not seeing? Let me know in the comments. I love getting into these conversations with you guys, because you guys teach me just as much as I hope, at least, that I teach you. All right, I will talk to you guys soon and see you around the game. If you are new to the community, don't forget to like and subscribe.